What's up, everybody? It's Maurice here with Christian Content Connection, and I have a good one of my friends, Alex, here, who's going to help us talk about growth today. So I'm just going to jump right in. I don't like to wait, and so I'm going to have him introduce himself, tell a little bit about himself and what he does, his business, his YouTube channel, podcast. He does it all. And so go ahead and tell the people about yourself.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Name's Alec Kassan. I'm I guess you could say like a digital ministry consultant, still working with the title there a little bit. I lead online ministry called Digital Ministry Mastery, where we go into tips and tricks and stuff of helping Christians grow their online ministry or Christ-centered business. I've got, I should have had the book right next to me, but I've got a little plaque on the wall of a book. All right, never mind. I tried to, but I had authored a book called "Planting Your Purpose," and that's just nice. Someone who had ordered the book. They liked it so much. They're like, dude, you got to hang this on the wall. And I was like, okay. So they made a little poster thing there for me. So I was like, sweet, I'll have it by my desk.
Nice. Yeah, so we wanted to get on here and talk to you guys about strategies for growth. If you feel like you're struggling. Whether it's, starting a small business, whether it's having your own YouTube channel, or whether it's, getting into the podcast arena. We kind of wanted to talk to you guys about that, give you some insights, some things that have worked for us. And so, yeah, Alec, actually, I want to start with that book that you mentioned. Can you kind of tell people more about it, what's in it, and where people can find it?
Yeah, sure. So the book's called Planting Your Purpose, a 20-day guide to discovering God's calling. It's kind of set up like a daily devotional. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold pretty much. And yeah, the book, it kind of came from a place of like me needing to kind of rediscover myself, kind of better understand how God was working in my life, because I kind of grew up with the whole thing of like, oh yeah, you do well in high school, you go to college, you graduate, you got the job, and then you get the house with the picket fence, you start getting engaged and things like that. And after college, I had a degree in a field of work that I was not passionate about. I was trying to start actually my own YouTube channel for a few years. That wasn't going, it wasn't picking up as much as I wanted. And then eventually I was like, I had to move back in with my parents, and all these things was just like attacking my ego. But it was good because it was stripping away a lot of these things that I thought were important. And then God was like, no, dude, it's about who you are, not just what you do. So this really takes both a practical and a spiritual approach to one's calling, not just vocation, but like who you are as well. And also there's heavy emphasis on like practical tips. Because I've read a lot of devotionals where they're super heady and it's kind of like, cool, I like that theology, I like how it sounds, but how does it apply in my life? So in this, there's actual questions you can go through, there's examples, and it's meant to help empower you to actually like kind of take some ownership, not just get like theological ideas, but like actually apply it in your life.
Yeah. So what is to piggyback off of that, because I am one person that I have a book about affirmations, and I find that I later did another book, the one I shared with you, which is Young and Powerful. And the difference between the two books is my first one was just affirmation, the scriptures, kind of devotional. But then the next one that I shared with you kind of goes more into the application process. And so, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because you kind of mentioned, yours has more of a applicable approach to it versus just general theological information for growth. So can you speak more into that, like the difference, so people understand that?
Yeah, it's kind of like, because it's so easy to feel inspired by different things that we read in the Bible, and we kind of like leave it at that, where it's like it sparks some ideas in our mind, or we're like talking with other people about it. But when you take it deeper than just like, okay, I know this sounds good, but then like, how does it look in my walk? Like, what can I do to apply it in my daily life? Then it begins to go from a place where you're kind of like, how people say knowledge is power?
Right.
I really believe it's like knowledge is like potential. It's potential power. And then when you start acting on it, that's where a lot of the power comes from. So it's sort of like that, where it's like, sure, you need the knowledge, but then once you start doing it, that's when, real change starts to happen. I hope that kind of answers the question.
It does. That's actually, I'm a big advocate for that. I probably said that almost on every connection here that I made, where I said, knowledge, it's only as powerful as you apply it. Like you can be in devotionals all morning long every single day, but then when you get up from that devotional and go about your day and you're not applying what you've learned, how are you growing? And the same thing with what we have here on today. We can give our best tips and strategies that's helped us out, but if you're not applying this information, how are you gonna grow if you really want to grow?
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of like in the New Testament how Jesus kind of like calls people out on that a bit with like the Pharisees, where they're feeding themselves with a lot of like intellectual knowledge, but they're not like actually like really applying it. And I wish I had the verse written here, but it's somewhere I think in like one of the New Testament letters where it's like, and shoot, I mean, I struggle with this sometimes where we're like, oh yeah, I pray for you, I hope things go well. And then it's like, yeah, but you got to do more than that. So like in the Bible, the verse was like, oh yeah, you're walking past someone who's hungry and cold, and it's like, well, I pray, God's going to help you. And it's like, no, why don't you feed the guy? Why don't you give him like some clothes to keep him warm? Like that's kind of like that next step approach there.
Right. That's like in that, I want to say, I think I'm familiar. I think it's like around Matthew chapter 12, where he's kind of talking to the Pharisees and kind of explaining the difference between what he's teaching and to the disciples and what the disciples have heard from the Pharisees. But that is so true, where you're like, oh, I pray for, I pray that you find what you're looking for, but then you have money in your pocket that you could spare and maybe go in that store and get that person a sandwich instead of just saying, hey, I pray that the next person that comes by blesses you. Well, you can really bless them right then and there.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Jesus kind of did his whole. I mean, it's literally how he did his whole ministry. He like went to people and he's kind of like, hey, experience life with me for a bit, and just let's see how we can kind of change how you're navigating through this world.
My next question for you, as people are joining in, and I ask that if you're watching us, go ahead and hit that like button. Let the algorithm know that what we're giving you today, in addition to our channels, is something that you're looking for, something that you're interested in. It lets YouTube know that what we're doing is something that you like. So go ahead and hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to either one of us yet, I'm gonna drop our information below. Go ahead and subscribe here. But for my first question here, for those who or let us know also in the comments, let us know if you're doing YouTube or podcasting or both. That way we can tackle the questions that you're looking for, as well as whatever questions for growth that you are inquiring about. Let us know so we can answer them today. But my first question for you, Alec, is what made you switch from YouTube to podcasting for what you do specifically?
Yeah, well, one of the big things I kind of like alluded to it earlier is I was putting in so much effort into this medium, and it just wasn't giving me the like return on my investment, so to speak. Like I wasn't seeing a lot of the fruits for the labor that I was putting into it. And I went super deep into studying how to use like Adobe After Effects and Adobe Premiere, script writing, cinematography. Like if anyone were to go to like the Current Christian YouTube channel and look at some of the earlier videos, there's like special effects, and it's like I'm doing my best to reference different Bible verses and things like that. And it's just one of those things where if we put like a lot of our effort into one area, just because we're putting in more effort doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get the direct results that we want. So the switch to podcasting was really because I was burning myself out and I wanted to be able to provide value to people and like share information. And I saw that podcasting was a way that I could do that without having to be worried about like, okay, how's my hair looking? Is it too distracting for people? Or like, what special effects should I do zooming through the screen? Or how do I set up the camera? And it's like with the podcast, I literally just have my phone and the headphones that it came with. And the audio quality is good. And I'm able to just like feel inspired and then like share that information on here and put it out into the world. And it really came from a place of like trying to avoid diminished returns, which basically means just because you're putting in more work doesn't necessarily mean you're getting more results. And yeah, there's actually like a really cool, can I share a story real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. All right. So there's this story. I don't recall who the coach was, but there was this football coach who got brought into this team. They like haven't won a Super Bowl in like decades. And he's coming in and he's kind of analyzing everything. And he's like, all right, guys, first thing we're going to do is instead of 2-hour workouts, we're going to cut it down to a half an hour. And already the team, they're like, we love this coach. This is fantastic. And football teams, they got like a board of directors and stuff, and they're hearing about this. And they're like, oh my gosh, we hired a lazy man. This dude's not trying to do any work. And he kept trying to explain to them. He's like, listen, if these men can get results in a half an hour, if it's the same results that they're going to get in a half an hour that they would get in 2 hours, why are they in the gym longer? And then he like applied that to every other area. It's basically like, and it sounds kind of lazy, but it's not, it's strategic. It's like, how can I put in the least amount of effort, yet still get the same type of results? And eventually they fired the coach. And then the next year they won the Super Bowl, but all the team players were like, no, it's because of this foundation that he had laid that allowed us to succeed. And hearing that, I'm like, oh man, yeah, where am I putting in more effort than I need to, where I could cut out a lot of things, have more time, and still get the same results? And then kind of led to the podcasting there.
So that's actually good because I would say, for example, for me personally, I kind of do like this talking head platform where I like to be animated, and I definitely like your podcast, guys. I'll go ahead and drop your podcast, Alec, in the comments so they can subscribe to it. Because as you already could tell, as he's like delivering his stories here, certain people have a voice for podcasting where you can be engaged for that 30-minute, hour-long, however, podcast, especially if they're giving good information that's going to help you grow. But not everyone has that same appeal. The same thing with YouTube. But YouTube, you have, I guess, a broader area where you can do the talking head, or you can do, like devotional videos and different types of things. There's like a wider range of things you can do with YouTube versus podcasting. But even for this type of thing here, this could have been just as easily done on a podcast where, you have two animated people sharing their thoughts and opinions and helping you grow as a person. So yeah, it really comes down to what do you think is best. So I would even inquire for you guys that are listening to kind of reevaluate what specifically do you want to convey to your audience, and then consider, okay, is podcasting the best thing for me, or is YouTube the best thing for me? Because I'm like the opposite of Alec. I started out trying to do YouTube, and I'm like, it's too much. I don't want to do it. Switch over to podcasts, have pretty decent engagement, but I just like videos and editing videos and doing all that kind of stuff. That's like a passion of mine. And so I've kind of left the podcasting alone. However, it's something that's still an interest of mine. And so I have to really consider, okay, what's better for me? What's better for my business? What's better for what I'm trying to do in my ministry? And so that's something that you might want to consider as you're looking for strategies to grow. But would you want to speak to that, Alec?
Yeah, it was actually, I think I think we may have talked about this in a post in one of the Facebook groups that you and I are in. But someone was asking like, oh, what should I do for my schedule to like make sure I'm getting the most out of my podcast, or how should I set up my show so it gets the most like listeners and engagement, things like that. And I could tell, I was like, okay, I think that like, it's like the real question you should be asking is, what method should I use that complements my lifestyle already? Because our lifestyles, it's comprised of all these habits, these things that are ingrained in our life. And I can guarantee 9 times out of 10, if it's your YouTube channel, if it's your TikTok account, if it's your Instagram profile, if it's a podcast, if it's between that and the lifestyle you have, 9 times out of 10, the lifestyle is going to kind of overwhelm the stuff that you're trying to do with these other channels. So if you're able to pick something that complements your lifestyle, or if you're one of those people who is willing to kind of sacrifice the things that you're comfortable with in your lifestyle, then, use that as part of your discernment process. Because again, for
Mm-hmm.
the podcast thing, I was like, if I do anything more complicated than my phone and my headphones,
Right.
I'm not going to stick with it. And that was something I kind of had to use just based on my own personality and things. So, for other people, it's like, yeah, you could do something like Instagram posts every week
Right.
and just, but like, again, the main thing, you want to make sure it complements your current lifestyle. Cause if it doesn't, then you're most likely going to end up giving up on the thing that God inspired you to start.
So speaking to that lifestyle that you're referring to, because I know we all have that Christian, especially like our target audience for this was Christian YouTubers and podcasters. So how important will it be to niche down or niche? I like say niche, but I think the professional term is niche. How important it is to niche down? Because at first, like when I first started out, it seemed like that was very important, but now there's kind of this stigma of like it's almost like a whatever you want to do kind of thing. And so, what's your opinion on niching down for those that are listening?
Yeah, it's definitely important. It's important for you as a content creator, and it's also important for your audience as well. If but it's tough to niche down. I totally understand why a lot of us don't want to niche down. I think it comes from our kind of like Christ-centered heart, where Jesus came to save the world, and we want to feel like we can serve everyone. But if you like read how Jesus like interacted with people, he like when he was walking on this earth during um, whatever it was, 0 AD or whatever time
Right,
period, he was very like specific about who he was serving during that time. Like when he was walking on earth, he wasn't here to help uh, people in Mexico. He wasn't here to help people in Asia or people in America before it was America. And I'm not saying that as like, oh, Jesus is ignoring these people. Rather, like he had human limitations combined with like this divinity within him of God. And after his sacrifice of his life and after being resurrected was this gift of eternity. Kind of that's when it was given to everyone. But he talked about how, you know, like sick people need healing. He's like, I'm here to help the sick people. He came first for the Israelites and then expanded out to the Gentiles. And then Paul takes over that. And his whole mission is like, I got to reach the Gentiles. And then other people like Peter and Peter's crew of people, like he's very focused more on like the Jewish people because he was just
right.
felt called to that. And that's like, but he had to, it's good to lean into those things. So if it's like if Paul was specifically focused on Gentiles, Peter was specifically focused on Jewish people, and if Jesus was specifically focused on like people who were sick, needed help, or like sick air quotes, then it's like we too have to do that. Like, and when Jesus gives the commission of like, I forgot what the exact order was, but like when you study, like when you look at the map, when Jesus gives the commission to like go out and make disciples in the
Disciples of all
world,
nations.
yeah, it's like each area location is larger and larger and larger. And then at the end, it says like, he says of the whole world, but it
Mhm.
starts by staying focused and on a specific thing. And then you can broaden out.
I think that's very important to understand because some of us, like myself included, especially, I feel like I'm well versed in different areas and I could talk about different subject matters. But it wasn't until I kind of like niched down where I really focused in on growing Christian creators, and then connecting with Christian creators. I found that's when my channel really started to take off. Where like today. I looked at my subscriber count and I didn't even know I cracked 300, and
Whoa,
that was
dude,
like huge for
that's
me
awesome.
because I just restarted my channel at the beginning of the year. And so my expectation was to hit that number by next month. And lo and behold, it's not even the end of March yet. And I took like 2 weeks off, granted. But that's all glory to God. But yeah, it wasn't until I niched down because I'm a believer that like, hey, if I can teach different creators new ideas on how they can grow their channel, they might be the one to expound and reach a great audience. Just so happen that I gave him the right tools and tips to get there. And so that's kind of like my part, where I believe that even though Jesus Christ lives through all of us, he really homed in on his 12 and gave them what they needed, filled them up with his spirit, and then they were able to spread the gospel in a way that Christ couldn't. Granted, Christ could very well have done the whole work himself. He could have walked this entire earth, spread the good news to everyone, but his strategy was to allow me to equip the believer with what they needed to spread out to other believers. And to your point that you were saying, he was a strategist. He was so particular in what he said, how he did it, where he did what he did. And I believe he puts a little bit of that in each and every one of us, where I could be called to, Florida, and you could be called to Cali, and then other area, and then people in between that area, they get connected with us. By the time we've all connected, we're now touching the whole nation and eventually the whole world.
Exactly. Like it's so, and again, like that's so awesome. I just want to emphasize again, like, dude, congrats for like hitting those milestones, That's some good stuff. But you're absolutely right. It's a collective effort, Jesus did the things he did so that we could model it. So it's like he worked with a small group of people, he equipped those small group of people, and then relied on them, or entrusted them with things. And now through thousands of years, we are now being entrusted too. It's kind of like, it's cool. We're part of, like, I heard this pastor say history, but he's like, it's not just history, it's his story. It's God's story. And it's like, oh, wow. We're part of God's story. And even through something that seems as menial as like a digital social media platform, it's like a new land. It's a new world. And even though we're not walking on it with our bare feet, it's still like, I was going to say it's still tangible. Like, yeah, I'm getting a little too heady there, but it's still a platform. It's still a place where people can talk and connect together. So it's important for us as Christians to like be in these places as well.
Yeah. So before I ask you my next question, I want to open up to the comments right now. Thank you guys for your support, for helping us get to this number here. Whatever questions that you guys have, like that you're struggling with growth, like I said, be it YouTube, podcasting, or if you just want our opinion on anything, please drop a comment below. We would love to answer any of your questions that you have right now while we're live here, so you can get those questions answered. But would you say that it's hard, Alec, to promote, or what is your best strategy for what's the word I want to use? What's that word? Organic growth. What is one of your best tips for trying to improve in organic growth?
Yeah, well, one of the best tips doesn't mean it's necessarily easy, but I think like one of the best tips you can do is finding groups that have people in them who would identify as like your ideal audience, or who you would identify as being your ideal audience. You have to, like, on the internet, it's like a double-edged sword, where it's like it both helps you reach people, but then it also can disconnect you from people as well. So we can't confuse like making posts and putting them online as being the same thing as like actually interacting with people. Like if we were out on the street and your ideal audience is, let's say people who like smoking their own meats. I don't know. I'm just making this. They like making their own beef jerky. And the only way you can interact with them is by meeting with them in person. Then you'd have to ask yourself, like, okay, what places would I go to? And then there's probably like restaurants, or might be different like farmer markets, and you're there. Imagine you're there, and all you do is you show up and you kind of like throw some flyers and then you dip. It's like, you can't do that. Like that doesn't work. You would have to, in like real life, you'd have to go there. You're looking around. You may come with things, and then it can have people like interact with that, but you got to be there too. So when you're going to these groups online, you can either go there being like, hey, here's some really awesome stuff, and unfortunately, most Facebook groups, things like that, you can't just like share a link to your video. You'd have to
Mm-hmm.
like see what their rules are. It might be you can only include text. So, you just write out whatever the information is that's in your episode or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then you also got to like interact with other people's stuff too. Like people want to have those connections. I mean, Maurice and I, that's how we like,
Right. Yeah.
that's like, you're an awesome dude for like continuing to like reach out to me and stuff like that. I love it. And,
Right.
we just got connected on like some posts and just started
Mhm.
talking, got to know one another. And it's just like him and I have both been saying it. It's like, dude, it feels like we've known each other for a while now. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like, it's,
It's
and
only been a
that's
couple of
like
months, but
what's
I
going
feel
to
like
end up
I went
happening.
to high school with you.
Yeah. Oh man, I've changed a lot since high school. I'm
Yeah.
happy you
Same.
didn't
You
meet me
know.
in high school.
Right.
It's like changed a lot since high school. Praise God. Am I right?
Amen.
Yeah.
But let
But
me see. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, that in terms of organic growth in terms of organic growth, that's probably one of the best ways to do it. Um, and eventually, just through the conversations,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to be they're going to be like, yeah, so like, what is it that you do? And then you can, but if you present people with that off the bat,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of turns people off a bit. But when
Right.
someone then feels comfortable enough to begin to want to learn more about you, then you can start talking about your channel or this or that. And especially if you're starting up a new channel,
Mm-hmm.
you could like ask the people who you're engaging with for what they would think, because I want to make sure I'm not going off too much on a tangent in terms of like, because I want to stay related with the organic growth. But a
Right.
lot of times when we're starting something, we might ask friends or family members, and unless they are your ideal audience, do not
Mm-hmm.
ask them. Uh,
Oh, that's
they might
good.
have some good ideas, but it's like one of the best ways that I had heard of that someone say that statement was like, if they're not the ones, and this was in terms of like if you have like a business or you're selling like a product or something like that, if they're not like paying you for what you have to offer, then you shouldn't be paying attention to like what they have to say.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, it's like it's a very firm statement, but it's
Mhm.
someone like me, like I need to hear that, because if it's like, oh, maybe sometimes hear what they have to say, then I know I'm gonna fully listen to what they have to say. And it's like,
Right.
because when people are voting for you with their money and they're trusting you with their hard earned cash, like that's someone whose opinion matters to you, because they say, hey, I trust you so much, I see what you're doing is so valuable that I want to give you this.
Mm-hmm.
Then you should take them seriously too, because if they're saying something where they're like, oh, I really thought you should talk about this, or you should have included that, um, then it's like that opinion matter, like that really matters. So in
That's
terms of like the organic growth, while you're having these conversations with people, you could ask people like, hey, what do you think if I had a channel name that is this? Or I'm thinking about making a product about this. Or one of the best things you can do is just ask people like what it is that they're struggling with, and then
mhm.
find the solution to that struggle. And then when you come out with that solution, people are going to be like, oh my gosh, it's like you can read my mind. And it's like, no, you just told me what you needed help with, and then here I am trying to help with that.
So I'll take a big takeaway from that, just to reiterate, is I'll say one, and I mean this well, but don't rely on family. Do not rely on family. You have a better chance of growing once you engage with strangers. Like most of the people that are my friends here now in the chat started off as complete strangers. I like their channels, they like my channels, we view each other's stuff, and then we built which is part two, community. And like you said, really engaging with individuals, and people can sniff a fake or someone who's
Yeah.
like, hey, I'll like your channel if you like mine, or I'll follow you if you follow me back. But most of the people I'm following and watching, and most of you guys in the comments are supporting me, I genuinely support you guys and love the content that you're putting out. And I'm like authentic, and I'm like, I'm watching your stuff, I'm putting it out there, and I like what I see. And some people aren't that genuine, but when you have that genuine community that you're building, one, you build friendship, family, and then you have a support system. Because one thing that I've learned now is being able to support others. They will support you too. Where before I try to do everything on my own, always posting, not really engaging in other people, but it was like, hope this video is one, hope this video is good, hope this video is good. Well, now I'm just like, I don't care. I do me, post a video, and then I'm like, oh, the highest name just dropped another video. Let me hop in on her devotional, because she has great devotionals. But and then you start getting engaged with the viewers, and then they start sharing to other people your stuff, and vice versa. And that's how smaller channels can grow. But here, let me see here. Another channel here that you guys should follow. I'm gonna leave it up here for a little bit so you can get the name and subscribe. But she put, I get views from different parts of the world, mainly from other YouTubers, but trusting that God will use the channel for his purpose. And I think that is the main thing. And I love your channel, by the way. And I love seeing your engagement with like your family and the stuff that you do is really engaging, which that is a perfect example. Her channel that I just posted here is a perfect example of something that is really good for YouTube versus podcasting. It's more of a like family vlog style, and just sharing herself, her family, her devotionals, and things of that nature. That is really good for YouTube versus podcasting, because you can't really like just imagine following a podcaster that's like, today me and my family did this, me and my family did that, right? It's not really engaging. People want to kind of see that when you're telling a story in that manner. I'm gonna try to get to another one of these questions here, and I'm gonna let you hop on this one, Alec.
Oh yeah, actually, I think that you actually brought up a really good point, and I think we should have addressed earlier too, when it comes to like picking something of like, oh, podcasting or YouTubing.
Right.
It's like the type of content, like that is, that's spot on. Like I think if I were to do something, if I were to try to do a vlog, but only vlog audio clips, it would sound like a train wreck. Like, what am I listening to? But it's like when you have the visuals associated with it, and it's like, oh, okay, I can understand what's going on there, things like that. Like, because mine was a fairly seamless transition, because all my content is fairly educational in nature. So when it comes to podcasting, that's a big portion of what people listen to. So they're listening for like self-education. But going from something like entertainment into something like podcasting, it might be a little bit more difficult, but doing entertainment through like videos is, it complements very well.
That's and while you're in the flow, can you give your talk on this, tips on preventing burnout? I feel like we've kind of touched on it, but we didn't go fully into it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different reasons as to why some people could be burnt out. One could be just doing a lot of work over a long period of time. And another one could be stressful work with no end in sight.
Right.
And there's probably some other third category that could be, that could cause someone burnout. But from my own personal experience, it's been those two things. So stressful work over a long period of time, that's, it's pretty self-explanatory. You feel like you're kind of banging your head against the wall. You're continuing to post content. And it's just like, oh man, now there's another social media platform out there that I got to engage with. And now there's another thing I got to do. That it definitely begins to feel overwhelming. And then for the second thing of doing stressful work without having an end in sight, that one's tough, because it could be just a very short period of time. You're trying a bunch of different new things, but because you're not too sure where it's going or if it's going to produce the results that you want, that's just all like mental stress. It weighs you down. And I was hearing like an analogy of someone saying how like they were running a marathon and it was in a new area. Normally they like to go to these areas beforehand to either train there or just see like what the terrain is looking like, and they didn't have time to. So they're running this marathon. Of course, their GPS watch is broken. They don't know how long they've been running for, and every minute feels like 10. And they're just like, there's no end in sight. I want to stop right now. And They ended up not stopping, and they got to the end, but it was just like a thing that they acknowledged. It was like, man, this was so interesting. By just not knowing what the end was,
Right.
it felt like way more stressful than it needed to be. Because this person ran marathons before. So when it comes to like preventing burnout, one thing that could really help is having that end in mind, knowing what the goal is, what that aim is that you're heading towards. Oftentimes it could just be having a strategy plan written out with metrics and dates. And when it comes to having those metrics and those dates, it's not meant to be like a burden, but it's just meant to be something to aim for.
Right.
And then when it comes to just, you're doing a lot of work over a long period of time, I would recommend, thinking of it from that perspective of the story I was talking about with the coach. There's probably things that you're doing that aren't actually adding to the results that you want. So you both got to know what those results are. And then you should probably write out what the things are that you're doing and what things you can cut out. Because when I was doing my YouTube channel, it was like, I was spending like 40 hours a week writing, editing, producing, scripting, like all that stuff. I got to that burnout point and I was like, I'm done. I'm stopping this. And oddly enough, that's where I saw the most growth. Like you can literally see. So like I have my account hooked up with like a Stripe account, which is where people can have transactions, things like that. You can see this flat line for 3 years straight. And then as soon as I literally stop uploading, like you can see my YouTube views are kind of going up, but not as much as they should with all the work I was putting in. The YouTube views are kind of going up. Or wait, actually, is it? I'm looking at myself mirrored in the camera.
Yeah, right.
So,
no, you're doing it right.
Yeah, so it's like YouTube views are slightly going up, and then you can see right at this point I stop uploading, it shoots down, and then the money in the Stripe account start like it's like a hockey curve starts going up. And the big thing I don't like, getting revenue and stuff is certainly cool, but it's like it represents more than that. It represents people who are like trusting me with the content I'm producing, who are looking for real results and are getting those results. And that's what those numbers are beginning to show. Cause it's like, you can have the subscribers, you can have the likes. But it's like, obviously we want to impact people's lives and we need a way to measure that. So it's either through, tracking comments that people are saying, or like when people are trusting you with their finances. Like imagine a church where no one tithes. It's not going to be a church that lasts long, but a church that's like thriving, their community is tithing. And, hopefully the pastor is not scaring people or doing the prosperity gospel there or nothing, but like a healthy church is going to have healthy finances coming in. It's just it's part of the journey. Don't muzzle an ox while it's like treading. So yeah, I sort of deviated a little bit there, but you got the end in sight, and then trying to map out.
I'll pick up from that because you gave me some, when you were talking, you gave me some ideas that I think are good to note for burnout is acknowledging that that you need to take a break. It's okay to take a break. Some of y'all saw recently, like for example, I recently lost my grandfather. In the beginning of March, I had this whole business plan for my channel to do March Madness. And then when I lost my grandfather, I was like, I'm gonna take a break and just, chill out for a little bit, which was good for me to get good clarity in my headspace and just, get back into a good place because that was a tough loss for me. But I'm still able to give encouragement, which is something that you can do. I would say you can recycle old content. So for example, if you have a popular video, you can look back, you can take a snippet of that video and repost it as a short, or you can just verbatim recite what you already posted in a bigger video and say, hey, I was talking about this. If you want to watch the full video, go to my channel, because your videos kind of circulate to your community where shorts circulate to everyone. So you kind of want to, you can start using shorts as an advantage if you're doing YouTube to grow that channel, recycling old content, repeating old information, breaking up long videos into smaller segments and putting them all as shorts. Those are different ways to gain engagement and to have people revisit your information. Because say you post something this week and it kind of floats in the YouTube space, you can repost it again a month later, and another audience will kind of have eyes on it that didn't have it the previous month. And so that's, another way to deal with burnout is kind of, stepping back, reusing what you've already done, maybe reframing it, rephrasing it, or doing it a different way, like doing a video like, my top 10 scriptures of the Bible, or now my top 10 most influential verses of the Bible. You kind of restructure it, because you might get new insight. You might have one revelation when you gave that text before, but then you redo it and God kind of gives you with the same scripture a new text. And there's nothing wrong with reusing the same information in the YouTube space. People do it all the time. When it comes to building more content, you can probably have the same video said 3 different ways on your channel, no matter what it is that you're doing. So that's something to kind of deal with being burned out and feeling overwhelmed. But let me see if I can get to the next question.
It's actually really, like, I love that tip too. I recently did that with some of my older podcast episodes. I changed the title up a little bit and reposted it. And sometimes, at first I was thinking, I'm like, oh, what if people are going to notice? They're going to be like, I already listened to this episode. No, they're not. They're not going to, they're not going to notice. It's totally fine. And if it's good quality content that you're putting out there, it doesn't hurt hearing it again. Like, there's a story of a pastor for like an entire month. He was giving the same exact sermon. And then eventually when it got into the second month, someone came up to him. They're like, Pastor, because he was kind of old. So they're thinking maybe he is like forgetting that he did the sermon. He's like, they're like, you keep preaching the same message. Like, when are you going to do a new message? And he was like, well, I'm going to do a new message when you apply all the things I taught in this one. And I was like, whoa, okay. But what I'm getting at with that is, like, if it's good content, it's okay if they hear it again. If anything, it's just a reminder to actually like apply the things that are being discussed.
Let's see. Next question. My channel is not growing as I'd like it to. Maybe the target is varied, but as long as it reaches many people, that's a bonus. That is very good. One rule of thumb I have with trying to get fixated on my target audience is I'm still a published author, but before I did YouTube, I was an author consultant. And so I will help people come up with strategies for publishing books and becoming self-published authors. And one of the things I always told them when they first wrote their manuscript was, write to one person. Think of like one person specifically. And Alec also, he can probably elaborate on this because he kind of helped me kind of take that advice into my YouTube space when we've talked before. But when you're thinking about like your audience, you could have one specific person in mind, like, what are they about? What do they like to do? Where do they fellowship? What are their interests? And you want to come on camera as you're talking to that one person specifically. So even like right now, my mindset is even though I'm trying to help everyone I can, I'm focusing like on one person in particular, trying to be that personal consultant to give you that feel that I'm talking to you specifically, even though there are multiple ones of you watching. And so I want every person I'm engaging with or listening to this to feel like, oh, he's talking to me specifically, like have that one-on-one feel. And when you come off the camera like that, people can better identify with that. But then others that you won't even think of will start to engage in your content. And that's just one of the tips for that question there. But over to Alec.
Oh yeah, I'm like, that's super solid. Like, I mean, super solid advice. Yeah, it's like you gotta find the specific person who you want your message to kind of like resonate with. I like thinking of it as like love letters. Like, you can't, if you try to write a love letter to everyone, you end up with a Hallmark card that says, oh, happy birthday. It's like, okay, cool, thanks. But it's like, if you're writing like a love letter to, it doesn't have to, like, it could be a passionate letter. Let's say, like, just in case you're writing a letter to a friend, you're not going to write them a love letter. But if you're going to be writing them a letter, it's like, oh, it's probably going to be like multiple pages. You're going to have some inside jokes going, different details about them. And I think like a good rule of thumb that I've been applying to my own ministry to better understand my own audience is, if you can describe them in the same fashion that you can describe your spouse or a close friend or family member, then you know you're onto something. Because if someone asked me early on my YouTube channel, they're like, yeah, so like, who's your target audience for your YouTube channel? I was gonna be like, yeah, Christians, you know, if they're Christian and they're online, it's going to be for them. And then if someone, now let's say someone asked me like, hey, can you describe your wife? Yeah, she's Christian. It'd be like, wait, how long have you known her for? This doesn't,
Right.
was this arranged or something? And it's like, you know, so it's like, if you could think of it like that, like if someone were to ask me to describe her, oh my gosh, I could go on and on, but that would be a whole different video here. And like when you can kind of get to that point with your audience, it'll really help with being able to find them, being able to engage with them, helping them feel like they can engage with you. And then also really helps with knowing what kind of content to produce as well.
Right. Yeah, because that way, like who did it? I think I forget who it was. Someone did their top 10 rising Christian channels from the one of the YouTube groups that we're in. And they you could tell that they watched the channels because they said follow this person, and then they put what this person's channel was about. So to let you know that they were actually engaged and that they knew exactly what that person's channel was about. And they were like verbatim, like this person is a great teacher. This person has great entertainment and blah, 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 blah. This person has great tips and strategies here. And they were able to identify each person's audience from the consistency in their videos. And that's what we want to convey to our audience when they come to us, when they're looking at my page and say, yeah, I think that was your video. So I was, kind of like throwing a shout out to you. Yep, that was definitely your video that I'm talking about here. and so she even did like she went from top 10, and then she was like, well, I have another 10 for you. And she just went through a list of shouting out all these other rising Christian YouTube channels that she was interested in, that she likes. And the way she did it was very good. And that kind of like what the person is putting out the content kind of says, hey, I appreciate that, because not only did you notice what I'm about, but you were able to identify my audience. And so you want to be able for your viewers to identify you. Like if you're passing somebody on the street and they're like, man, I am struggling as a Christian podcaster. Like I have good content, but I don't know how to market myself. I'm like, I got this guy here that I can point you to, because he's going to give you this information specifically. And so, and I think that's how we have to put ourselves out there. That's how we have to convey our message. That's how we have to focus on our target audience, right? And so, yeah, and I also did that plug in there too, so to let people know that I know you guys are watching me, but I'm watching you guys too. And I know it feels good to be watched when you're in this space. I know it feels good to be listened to. And so just let you guys know that I'm here. I am supporting you guys the same way you guys are supporting me. Are there any more questions, or are there any other tips for growth that you have? Because I did have another one that I wanted to do. It's going to be like a bonus tip, like just something to consider, because I do like graphic design on the side, and I do I'm getting into coaching, personal development, things of that we've talked about. And so one of the things I found that if you guys want to grow your channel and put some money in your pocket, you can do like a freelancer servicing, where it's basically like Fiverr and Upwork and things of that nature, which is a platform for freelancers, where you can like literally people have like, I'll be your friend for 20 minutes. You can tell me whatever you want. You can put what you do for your YouTube channel and kind of sell that as a resource for you. You can engage and build new audiences and new connections, and then allow that to grow your channel. For example, one of the things I do on my Fiverr account is I do coaching. And so part of that coaching, one of the things I offer is a strategy session where you can pay X amount for that, that service. And then I get, that's the way I get paid through my business. But then now I'm growing in that area of developing others in coaching. So now when I transition over to my YouTube, I'm like, these are some tips and strategies that I've actually helped with different individuals. You have actual engagement, and you don't have to do as much work because those sites have people looking for you already. So you don't have to worry about marketing. So that's one way that you can put money into your pocket, grow your brand or business, depending on what it is that you do. And then from there, kind of have both of those areas work together. And so I just wanted to give that bonus tip out there, something to consider if you do any kind of freelancing like writing, speaking, designing, anything like that that you can do in addition to your podcasting or YouTube. Try those things out. Do some research. See what areas can help you grow. And it's going to take time, but you're going to see the fruit in the end. So, anything else you want to add to that?
I think that's an area where a lot of people try to like avoid for some reason. I think that like a lot of us, especially like Christians, may or may not have grew up where it's like people feel finicky around money. Like, oh, I don't know if it's okay to try to make money or do this or that. And like, I mean, you and I, we're not talking about ripping people off. We're also not talking about like, oh, getting filthy, stinking rich over here. It's like, no, you gotta like
use Jesus.
You gotta have an income. Yeah, it's like I want to pay my bill with prayer. No, that's not how that works. But it's like, but having like you have to have like an outlet for people to be able to financially contribute to your channel, because without that, then you're sort of relying on things like going viral. And even after you go viral, it doesn't even guarantee you're going to get any income like that. My channel was originally solely built on the hope that people were just going to donate, and wasn't working. Like I said, 3 years, flatline, nothing. And I ended up actually like getting to speak with this like mentor at the time. And he at the time he had like maybe like 20,000 followers on Instagram. And he was telling me a story about how there was this girl who had 1 million followers, and she tried selling her own t-shirt brand and couldn't even sell like a dozen shirts. And then he was pointing out how like, hey, but like, you know, with my channel, I'm able to get like hundreds of thousands from my audience. Right. I was like, that was mind blowing. I was like, why don't more people know about this? And a lot of times just like people are either worried to try to put something out there to then try to ask people to pay for. But also it's like social media companies, they like feed us with this belief that like, if you go viral on our platform, you will be set up for life. And it's just like, of course they want you to believe that, because then you're going to create more content on there. You're also likely going to create content that gets people to stay on their platform longer, because that's their end goal. They want people on their platform longer. They want content that is specifically tailored to advertisers. And if you can provide those things and you can help them win, then they'll give you a little bit on the side to help you out a little bit too. But you know, if we're producing things that are like Christian content, likely our content's not going to be pushed towards the top, because it could be touchy for advertisers.
And I think that's while I'm about to share this next comment, if you can drop your YouTube channel in the comments below, then I'm going to post it so people can see it. But to that point there, I think a lot of us as believers struggle with monetizing in the faith because we feel like it's a disservice to the kingdom, or like we're trying to make money off of God, and that's not the case. I will say it's very dependent on what you do. For example, if you have a general ministry and you're like, if you want to support the ministry, you can give this way, but I would not charge for prayer. But if I've been praying for free, and and it takes time to do that consistently and every day, especially having good quality tools and things like that, and you say, hey guys, if you like what I'm doing, if you don't mind supporting, I feel like that is different. But if your intent is to make money off of godly services, I feel like that is wrong. But if you're doing things that require you to profit, then I believe that's okay. For example, YouTube was set up in a way for monetization, and I believe that that's something that can be a blessing, especially if you're growing. That monetization can help you grow more and get the word of God to more ears, more people. in the body of Christ. And so I feel like you have to look at the great spectrum. In addition to that, I know we talked about it earlier. Sorry, and I made a video about it as well. That and I'm gonna post it later too when I'm talking about the principles of tithing and giving. I think I posted a snippet of that in my last video. But there's certain principles that come with giving, and God blesses those that give. And not to go on a tangent or anything else like that, but I felt like just dropping that that concept or that idea out there, that don't be fearful, because I think that's what prevents us from putting out a lot of quality things or things that we're doing as Christians, because there's like the stigma of like, oh, Christians shouldn't get paid for that, or Christians, or that's ungodly for us to do this thing in the name of God and make money off of it. And so my prayer is that we find what areas are right and what areas we should not be monetizing in, and then not be afraid to monetize for the kingdom's sake.
Yeah, it's like the difference between, like, because I'm sure in biblical times there was probably Israelites selling like pottery or food, things like that. But where the line got crossed was when you had people in the temple selling a means for people to be forgiven for stuff. And just as Maurice was saying, it's like, yeah, you don't try to sell prayers, things like that. It's like, that's when you're really like, you're putting like a pay barrier between someone and their relationship with God, and his like that totally goes against everything that he was trying to do in the first place. So, because it's like the whole point of like him coming down to earth to die for our sins was so that there would be no barrier between us and him. And then if any of us come along and we're like, oh, well, there is a barrier and it costs $5, then it's like, what? No, that's ridiculous. But you could easily be like, I was attending this, or I was watching a Christian leadership summit, like live stream thing. And there's a guy, he's sharing all this great like insight and stuff of like how to like have like Christly character in like in the workplace and this or that. And then at the very end, there was like a Q&A, and someone asked her like, yeah, so you talked about like, representing like Jesus in the workplace and stuff. And that might be easy for you, like being a pastor, but how would we do it? And the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, I'm sorry I didn't clarify. Yeah, I'm not a pastor. I actually specialize in shipping large items. And then they're like, what do you mean large items? He's like, well, you know how you need cranes to build things? That's something we would ship. Or sometimes we ship ships. If it's a big enough ship, we'll ship a ship. And it's like, what? But like, you don't think of transporting like large utilities as anything related to God. Yet he comes into the workplace and he works with other people who he's doing contracts with, and he has like this Christly character about him, and people in the workplace love it, and the people who he works with recognize that as well. And he said he's like, yeah, it's fantastic both for me spiritually, and it's been fantastic for my business as well. And it has nothing to do with anything religious-y.
Right. I totally agree. Like, and like knowing, and really just knowing, that you're doing something for God. I believe God's going to bless you anyhow, even in that story. Or if you carry yourself in a certain demeanor, like I've experienced countless times where people will ask, am I a pastor? Do I have my own church or things of that nature? I'm like, no, I'm just a child of God. Yeah, I'm licensed minister at my church, but even in that, it's not like I'm like this big thing. Like, I just want to serve. And so when you carry yourself a certain way, people are going to automatically, put that label, which is good. I always am an advocate for let other people tell you that you're Christian, and you having to try to tell others that you're Christian. And so even like with my channel, I just put general stuff out there. I might put Christian this or that in the title, but sometimes I like to just generalize it. But then once you lock into the video, you kind of get that from what we put out. And I know we've been here for a long time, and thank you, Alec, for joining me. We definitely are going to collaborate again. but I know we both got family and wives and to attend to.
Yeah.
So, do you have any closing remarks? I'm gonna let you finish us out. Any tips, closing remarks, or anything you would like to share before we close out here today?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess like if there's any more questions and stuff that you guys have,
Yeah.
hit Maurice up. You can hit me up as well if you if you'd like. But I feel like we kind of almost like just barely scratched the surface on some of these topics. Like I'm almost like, let's do another hour, but that's I feel like my throat would probably not thank me for that. But
Look, this is what I will do. Let me know what your schedule's looking like. While we're live here, I'm gonna say I'm gonna try to shoot for maybe Wednesday, Thursday, but when we get offline, we can kind of confirm it. But if you guys like this, get your questions ready. And then also, if you feel like you have some tips, I might bring someone on to join in because I like having a table talk conversation. And if you're just tuning in, go ahead and hit that like button. That would be a blessing to the algorithm, to the YouTube channel here. Go ahead and follow Alec there. I dropped his link below. But yeah, if you have any questions, shoot out to both of us now that you guys have his channel. And then we'll be hopping on later again this week, if not next week, to talk about some growth strategies for you all. And thank you all for your support. Any last?
Oh no, it's been a pleasure. Like this was a lot of fun. I felt like I got super inspired hearing a lot of stuff you were sharing. I hope everyone else was feeling inspired by kind of like the different topics and things we were discussing throughout.
Well, thank you, Alex. You were definitely an inspiration to me and gave me a lot to think about. And I love the stories, man. So your stories are always welcome on here. But thank you, guys.
Storyteller.
Yes. Yeah, definitely go. I pinned his podcast too. Great podcast. If you're looking to get into podcasting, I strongly encourage you guys to listen to that. And as always, be encouraged, to be blessed, be inspired. Catch you guys on another episode of Christian Content Connection.